The dusty noon sun beat down on the small frontier settlement as if it wanted to scorch away the shame gathering in its center, where a crude wooden platform had been erected and a crowd of hardened men circled like vultures pretending not to be vultures at all. On that platform stood a trembling young woman, her dress torn at the hem and her hair loose from days of hardship, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a thin scrap of cloth that barely kept out the wind. The baby whimpered softly, unaware of the cruelty unfolding, and the woman clutched it tighter as the auctioneer, a wide-bellied man with a voice like spoiled whiskey, lifted her chin as though she were livestock. A healthy girl with a healthy infant. A 2-for-1 deal. Who'll start the bidding? He barked, and an uneasy ripple passed through the men. Some looked away in guilt, others leaned closer in hunger. No one knew exactly where she'd come from. Some wagon train ambushed, some family lost, some cruel fate thrown at her, but all knew that she had no husband left, no kin to defend her, and no silver to free herself. At the back of the crowd, leaning against his horse with his hat pulled low, stood the silent rancher known only as Calder Shaw. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face half-shadowed by dust and the burden of memories best never mentioned. People said he spoke less than a prayer said over a grave, and he carried sorrow the way other men carried guns, ready, heavy, and dangerous. Calder had ridden into town for supplies, not salvation, but the moment he saw the child shaking in the woman's arms, so small it barely filled her hands, his jaw clenched hard as though something old inside him had been struck like a bell. The bidding began, a few coins tossed half-heartedly as the men hesitated, valuing her like a broken chair rather than a human soul. $5. One barked. 6. Another laughed. The woman closed her eyes, whispering something to her baby, maybe a prayer or a goodbye. When the auctioneer slammed his stick and called for higher offers, silence fell, and then the crowd parted on instinct as heavy boots stepped forward. Calder Shaw didn't speak. He simply dropped a full leather sack onto the auction table so hard the gold coins inside clattered like thunder. Gasps rose like smoke. Every head turned. Even the woman looked up, chairs freezing mid-fall. No one in the settlement had ever seen that much gold in one place, and no one understood why the silent rancher would spend more than a small fortune on a stranger and her baby. The auctioneer stuttered, his greed choking him, but the weight of the money spoke louder than his tongue ever could. Sold, he croaked, and Calder finally lifted his hat enough for the woman to see the steady, unshakable honesty in his eyes. "Ma'am," he said gently, one word, but it felt like a door opening instead of closing. He didn't reach for her, didn't claim her, didn't treat her like the others had. Instead he simply extended a quiet promise in the space between them. Safety, dignity, a future not built on fear. The woman's knees nearly buckled as she whispered, why would you do this?" Calder looked at the newborn, whose tiny fingers clung to her dress, and something haunted flickered across his face. "Nobody should be priced," he said softly. "Not you, not the child." He turned to escort her away, but the crowd, shamed by his courage and stunned by his sacrifice, began murmuring, questioning, wondering who this man really was. Some whispered admiration, others resentment, yet none dared challenge him. As they walked down the dusty slope of the auction yard, the baby let out a small cry, and Calder paused, hesitating as though remembering something painful. "You, need a place to rest," he said, stumbling over his own words in a way that surprised even himself. She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes, clutching her child tighter. "I don't even know your name," she said. Calder hesitated, then took off his hat properly for the first time. "Calder Shaw. I've got a ranch just beyond the ridge. You're safe with me if you want to be." Her breath trembled as she nodded, reluctantly trusting a man after trusting had gotten her hurt so many times, but something in his voice felt like a blanket against the cold wind of the world. When they reached his horse, he helped her up gently, careful not to touch her more than necessary, careful not to jostle the infant. As they rode away, the settlement behind them slowly shrank, but the weight of what had happened did not. She whispered her name into the air, Alara, and Calder repeated it almost silently, as if committing it to the pieces of his heart that still worked. The trail was long, winding through golden grass and quiet hills, and for the first time in days, Alara let her shoulders relax. "Why did you pay so much?" she asked again, softer this time as the baby slept. Calder swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "Because once, someone didn't pay anything," he answered, and though he didn't explain, Alara understood. He'd lost someone too. The wind carried their silence like a companion, and when Calder pointed toward his ranch, vast land touched by sunset, framed by mountains like protective walls, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in months: hope. "You and your child will have a place here," he said, his voice steady as stone. "Not because I bought you. Because I chose to stand between you and the world." She blinked hard, tears slipping free, and said the words that branded themselves into Calder's quiet soul: "Thank you for seeing us." And though he didn't answer, he lifted the baby's small hand into the golden light, as if promising the child a life untouched by the cruelty of the place they'd left behind. And in that moment, a silent rancher, a broken mother, and a newborn found something born out of courage, sacrifice, and the price one man dared to pay when no one else would: a beginning.